The evening air hung thick with heat and dust as a small boy ran down the cracked road, his bare feet slapping against the pavement. His voice tore through the noise of the town like a siren. "They're beating my mama," he cried, his breath hitching between sobs. The row of bikes parked outside the diner gleamed under the fading sun, black chrome beasts that looked like they belonged to men who didn't scare easy. The first biker to turn around was Axel, a tall man with scars that told their own stories. He crouched low as the boy stumbled into his arms, clutching at his jacket. "Hey, slow down, kid. Who's hurting her?" he asked, his voice rough but calm. The boy's tears streaked the dust on his cheeks. "Them. The men from the bar. They went to our house. Mama tried to stop them, but they're hitting her." A silence fell among the bikers. Forks dropped. Conversation stopped. In one motion, every man stood up. Axel looked at his brothers. No words were needed. They knew what came next. "Where?" he asked, already reaching for his helmet. The boy pointed down the road, where the last light of day faded into the trees. Engines roared to life, shaking the ground. The sound made heads turn all down the street as the gang rolled out, the boy clinging to Axel's vest from the back of the bike. Wind whipped through his hair as they sped toward the small row of houses at the edge of town. When they reached it, the sound of shouting cut through the night. The boy pointed to a house with its front door wide open, lights flickering inside. Axel parked hard, dust swirling around his boots as he jumped off the bike. "Stay here," he told the boy. The other bikers fanned out silently, moving toward the noise. Inside, the scene was chaos. A woman, thin, bruised, her dress torn, tried to shield herself from two men, both drunk and laughing. "Please, my son, he's just a child," she cried, her voice raw. The taller man sneered. "Maybe next time, you'll learn to keep quiet." The words were still hanging in the air when Axel stepped through the door. His presence filled the room before he said a word. The men froze, their laughter dying instantly. One tried to speak, but Axel's glare shut him down cold. "You got 3 seconds," Axel said quietly. "1 to think about what you've done. 2 to regret it. 3. The first punch landed before he even said the number. The house shook as chaos erupted. The bikers poured in behind him. Fast, silent, precise. It wasn't wild rage. It was justice, sharp and brutal. The two men didn't stand a chance. Within seconds, they were on the ground, gasping, their arrogance broken. Axel stood over them, breathing heavy, eyes burning. "You ever touch her again," he said, his voice low but shaking with fury. "You'll pray the law gets to you before we do." The woman stood in the corner, trembling, her eyes wide. Axel turned to her, his tone softening. "He's safe. Your boy's outside." Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "Thank you." But Axel didn't smile. He glanced back at the men on the floor, then at the door. Something in his gut told him this wasn't over. Axel stepped outside into the cool night air, the roar of engines fading behind him. The little boy ran straight into his mother's arms, clinging to her waist as if afraid she might vanish. She sank to her knees, crying into his hair. For a moment, the world felt still again, but Axel's eyes never left the dark road beyond the trees. He knew men like the ones they'd just handled. They never learned. They regrouped. They came back meaner. "Get them inside," Axel told one of his brothers. "Lock the doors. Nobody leaves till morning." His voice carried weight, the kind that didn't invite arguments. The others nodded, spreading out around the house. A few minutes later, as the boy and his mother sat by the small kitchen table, Axel leaned against the wall, watching them. "You got anyone else?" he asked gently. The woman shook her head. "Just me and him. My husband died 2 years ago. Those men, they work for the landlord. Said I owed money." Her voice cracked on the last word. Axel's jaw tightened. "How much?" $200, she whispered. The room went quiet. Then one of the bikers, Tank, grinned from the corner. 200? That's it. We spend more than that on tires every month." He pulled a roll of bills from his jacket and dropped it on the table. "Debt paid." The woman's lips trembled. "I can't take that." Axel shook his head. "You're not taking. We're giving. Consider it interest for the trouble those men caused." Outside, thunder rolled low over the hills, the wind picking up again. The boy tugged on Axel's vest. "Mister, will they come back?" Axel crouched down, looking him in the eye. "Not tonight, kid. Not while we're here." But deep down, he wasn't sure. The kind of men who worked for landlords like that didn't just get even, they sent messages. As if on cue, headlights flickered down the road. A black pickup slowed near the gate, its engine humming low. The bikers outside tensed immediately. "We got company," one of them called out. Axel stood up, his face hardening. He motioned for the boy and his mother to stay back. "Get in the bedroom. Lock it." They obeyed without a word. The pickup stopped. 3 men got out, rough, thick-built, carrying the kind of confidence that comes with a gun tucked under a belt. One of them lit a cigarette, the glow briefly lighting a scar across his face. Axel stepped forward, flanked by his crew. The rain began to fall again, light but steady, turning the dust into mud beneath their boots. The man with the cigarette smiled slowly. "You the one who thinks he runs this street now?" Axel didn't answer. He just looked at him, that cold, unblinking stare that made men forget their courage. "You got 5 seconds," he said quietly. Then I stopped talking. The man chuckled. 5 seconds for what? Axel's answer came not in words, but in sound. The growl of 10 engines roaring to life behind him, shaking the night. The men's smirks faded. This wasn't going to be a warning anymore. It was going to be a reckoning. The rain turned heavier, drumming on the steel tanks and helmets like a warning from the sky itself. Axel stood in the middle of the muddy road, his boots planted, eyes locked on the men ahead. Behind him, the bikes idled in a perfect line, their headlights glowing through the downpour like eyes of judgment. The man with the scar flicked away his cigarette. "You really think you can scare me with toys and noise?" he sneered. His hand moved toward his belt. But before it could reach the gun, one of Axel's men, Trigger, revved his engine so loud it made the ground tremble. "Try it," Trigger growled. "Go ahead. Let's see who bleeds first." The scarred man froze, realizing too late that every biker had stepped forward, slow, steady, closing the gap inch by inch. Rain splashed against leather vests and dripping chains. Axel's voice cut through the storm, calm but deadly. "You touched a woman in front of her kid. You think we'd let that slide?" The man hesitated. His partners shifted uneasily. "She owed money," he barked back. "Just business." Axel took another step closer, his shadow stretching across the puddles. "Then business ends tonight." The man's hand twitched, and that was all it took. Before he could blink, Tank swung his helmet, smashing it across his jaw. Another biker kicked the gun away, sending it skidding under the truck. The fight exploded in the mud, fists, boots, rage. The rain turned red around them. One man ran, slipping and falling into the ditch. Trigger caught him by the collar and slammed him against the fence. "Apologize," he shouted, rain pouring off his face. The man spat blood and stammered. I'm sorry." Axel pinned the scarred man against the hood of the truck. "You ever come near them again," he said, his voice low and cold, "and you won't get the chance to say sorry." The man didn't answer. He just nodded, choking on rain and fear. Axel let him drop, breathing hard. The fight was over, but the message had been carved into the night. Some wrongs didn't need lawyers to fix them, just courage and a loud enough engine. The bikers stood in the rain, the adrenaline fading. Behind them, the small house glowed warm through the storm. The boy peeked through the window, eyes wide. His mother stood behind him, hands clasped, watching the men who had turned darkness into protection. Axel turned toward his crew. "Let's ride," he said quietly. Engines roared again, echoing through the hills. As they pulled away, the rain washed the mud and blood off the road, but the story would stay. In that small town, people would remember the night the bikers came. The woman stepped onto her porch, holding her son close. "Who were they?" the boy whispered. She smiled faintly through her tears. "Angels, baby," she said softly. "The kind that ride in black." But miles down the road, Axel's face stayed hard. He'd seen too much to believe in angels. Yet tonight, he didn't care. Some fights weren't about faith. They were about doing what no one else would. By morning, the storm was gone, leaving the road slick and shining under a pale sunrise. The world felt calm again, but for Axel, the night still echoed in his head. The boy's voice, the screams, the way fear had turned into fire inside him. He sat at the edge of the gas station lot, sipping cold coffee, watching the mist lift off the hills. One by one, the rest of the bikers pulled in, engines quiet, faces tired but proud. Trigger leaned against his bike. "You think they'll stay gone?" he asked. Axel didn't answer right away. He looked toward the open road, eyes squinting against the morning light. Yeah, he said finally. Fear travels fast. They'll think twice before touching her again. Tank grinned faintly. You ever notice something, boss? We ride in, make things right, and still no one believes we're the good guys. Axel gave a small laugh, shaking his head. Doesn't matter who believes it. The kid knows. That's enough. At that same moment, down the road, the woman and her son stood on their porch. The boy held a small paper bag, biscuits his mother had baked that morning. Can we give it to them? He asked. She smiled. They're long gone, sweetheart. The boy looked out toward the distant hum of engines and whispered, then they'll know anyway. The woman closed her eyes for a moment, tears slipping down her cheeks, not from fear this time, but relief. For the first time in years, she felt safe. Back on the highway, Axel slipped on his sunglasses and kicked his bike to life. The others followed, the thunder of their engines rolling across the empty road. He didn't look back, but a faint smile tugged at his lips. There was peace in knowing they'd left one small corner of the world better than they found it. As the wind rushed past, Axel's voice came low through the roar of the ride, half to himself, half to the brotherhood riding beside him. People think kindness is quiet, he said, but sometimes it rides on two wheels. The line of bikes disappeared into the horizon, the sun catching their chrome and scattering it like sparks across the morning sky. Somewhere behind them, a mother held her child close and whispered a silent thank you, one the wind would carry to those who didn't wait for heroes. If this story moved you, share it. Somewhere out there, someone might need to remember that courage isn't about fists. It's about standing up when no one else will. Because sometimes, kindness doesn't whisper, it roars.